Well, um, I feel that those who follow Hegel are basically left wing, to which I might need to add the caveat that there is supposedly a left wing Hegelian group of followers and a right wing Hegelian group of followers. To me, the right wing group of Hegelian followers is basically null and void, doesn't exist, is demeaned and dismissed. And this means that Hegel is basically followed by people that get derailed, and it inevitably then becomes part of a left wing, um, that word, um, social social tribe, uh, tribal identity is the phrase I'm looking for. So, full stop. Sorry, I need to start again. While I consider Hegel to have the problem I've described above, I consider Hegel to be perhaps the last stop in what one might call old philosophy. And enough time has passed so that we can start using, in inverted commas, old philosophy as a basis, full stop. You might start saying, well, what about what came out of Hegel? The rebellion against Hegel. If you're including Hegel, you've got to include the rebellion against Hegel. Schopenhauer obviously attacked an element of Hegel, which again I think was quite left wing, and I think he was right to do so. But can you say his claim with regards to a will to life is anything more than an assumption that Hegel is a power figure, and therefore if I react to Hegel, my theories are accepted because he's in all the universities, which he was at the time, and therefore if I'm having my opinion on Hegel, therefore that legitimizes me. When Hegel falls out of legitimacy, Schopenhauer then becomes little more than just his thoughts on the world. It loses its rigor, its sense of rigor. And although Nietzsche describes quite a strong theory in relation to the Apollonian and the Dionysian, that's quite rigorous, and things that come out of that in his later work, Superman. Again, you could struggle with Nietzsche on the same level, and I think the modern sense of coming out of G.E. Moore and Russell and the Viennese group of logical positivism and Wittgenstein, I think they would quietly divert around Nietzsche, and if you press them, would politely tell you that they don't study Nietzsche. And that's for the same reason, I think. Now, when I'm saying we now have enough distance between us and Hegel to, despite my misgivings, say that the end of old philosophy happens around then, what I'm saying is that we've had this sort of university department's obsession with things like Wittgenstein and, isn't now everything terribly precise? Well, nobody else has done much of interest. Yes, Wittgenstein was precise. Great, we've got Wittgenstein, but we haven't got a precise model. Philosophy has not got a model that works. We've just got Wittgenstein. You can't say we've got Wittgenstein and therefore we've got a model. No, we've only got Wittgenstein. Nobody else represents a very precise attack on philosophy through precise dismantling of language. Of course, we mustn't get confused with semiotics being about using language as a basis of philosophy. That heads off in the direction of what this highly precise fad dislikes, and it emerges into structuralism and post-structuralism and French talking. I'm talking about post-level literary criticism and the idea, the dismantled idea of an era called postmodernism. But Wittgenstein is loved by this group and held up like, oh, we have got philosophers who are precise. Yeah, you've got one, he's called Wittgenstein, and you don't have a system based on the fact that one guy went down that avenue, found some things to be precise about. That's not the basis for a model that works in philosophy. So what I'm saying in terms of saying enough time has passed is I am not of that group. So what instead I'm going to look at is words that come out of the other angle in philosophy, that the angle in philosophy that dislikes this obsession with aligning itself with science and proof, this obsession with I'm being truly philosophical because I'm much more precise than you, and because I'm not just talking about my own thoughts. Instead, I'm going to highlight that we have certain words that have come out of that other branch, particularly the French branch, literary criticism, Derrida and Foucault and stuff like that, in order to combat the attack that this is not true philosophy. I'm just going to try and show words as that represent major techniques, and that if you don't get into a discussion about these things, how can you dismiss them? All you're doing is dismissing them on the basis that they're not proven. And my argument is that creating the idea that philosophy is now based on an argument of proof, on a model of proof, is ridiculous, not true, redundant. We fight against it. If we are a group, this group that sort of responds to Derrida, Foucault, Lyotard, particularly Lyotard, the idea of the grand narrative, and that science is also one of those grand narratives. It's a very much more human philosophy. It rejects the historical materialism, I think. Even though Derrida was very left, Herbert Marcuse of the Frankfurt School continues to be a major part of the modern left. But I think there's elements of this French school, this French line that's now sort of proving itself more and more. I think that is not necessarily left-wing. It's critiquing historical materialism. It's critiquing materialism. It's critiquing Marx. So let me just stop this for a second, and then I can continue when I've got some information. It will take 3 seconds only.